Atelier Ryza is the latest game in a long-running laundry list of games under attack by video game journalists. Why, you ask? Because of its fan service elements. This is becoming a repeated trend over the years, and it's absolutely become frustrating because it is starting to affect the video game industry. Longtime subscribers of the channel will know that I have talked about censorship in the past. As a matter of fact, it's why my channel blew up, is because I did realize that there weren't people talking about it, and I had a lot to say about it, as it was something that I felt needed to be discussed. Censorship in video games is never something I am a huge fan of, especially when it hurts the content that's coming out. It's not the end-all be-all to video games completely. There are some games that can be completely functional with some sort of censorship, but it's when a game starts to lose the meaning or elements of the plot have to be changed so it doesn't offend somebody or doesn't fit a family standard that it has a problem with. Or in the case of Senran Kagura Burst Renewal, where the game has a gameplay mode completely removed in the PlayStation 4 version, devaluing what that game has to offer and making the Steam version, at the same price mind you, a better bang for your buck. We also have games such as Dead or Alive Extreme 3 and Omega Labyrinth Z that never got a release over here, meaning they were going to, in the case of Omega Labyrinth Z, it was going to be localized, but at the last minute, Sony pulled the plug, and P-Cube had to say, nope, we can't localize it, we're sorry. Meaning the only way American fans are able to enjoy that game is if they import it and understand Japanese. This is a big problem. This is not the first time we've seen it. Shin Megami Tensei, that was the reason we didn't get Shin Megami Tensei on the PlayStation Nintendo, because, well, Nintendo had that strict religious policy that they were following, and they didn't want that to tarnish their reputation back in the day. But regardless of what it is, the constant attack on fan service games is becoming detrimental to the video game industry. Not only are game journalists who are complaining about it creating a very toxic community, because the Twitter mob and journalists that follow in that circle jerk of friends refer to us as incels, neckbeards who live in mom's basement, who can't get laid. It's all just such a stereotype, and it's frustrating to hear. Especially because games like the Atelier games have quite a sizable female fan base. There's a lot of female gamers who really do enjoy these. I know a couple who work at my local GameStop. JRPG Jungle is another one that talks about these games religiously, and honestly, her excitement about Atelier Ryza has me wanting to play an entry since I stopped playing back with Rorona when I couldn't get into that on the PlayStation 3. This is really a game that I want to try solely because of how much she's talking about it, and her excitement's getting me excited to play it. But that's the problem. People just say, oh, don't talk about it, they won't fix, they'll go away. The problem is they don't, and these developers and companies are caving to them. We don't have to look any further than what happened with Sony and their censorship policies towards these games. There are games that are being released on Steam that are being uncensored on the PlayStation 4 version, which makes it frustrating for people to have to do research of which version or which console they want to buy these on, so it's quote-unquote not censored. There's been a slew of games that have come over from Japan as of recently that have been censored, so much so I can't list them all in this video alone. Conception Plus is one that has been censored on PlayStation 4 but is uncensored on Steam, meaning that Steam users are going to be able to get the game the way that the developers intended it to be released, which is how I will be picking it up when we play it on the channel. The problem is, I take a look at such games that are coming out. Project Sakura Wars, or Shin Sakura Wars as it's known in Japan. Coming out next year, we have Persona 5 The Royal, a game that I am highly anticipating and looking forward to, but I have to ask myself, is this going to be censored to not ruffle some little snowflake's feathers or, push aside this feminist agenda that we can't have sexy females in video games. Sony's already taken a huge stance against this. While we're at it, let's address the Final Fantasy VIII controversy that came around with Siren. I get why they censored Siren. I mean, if they were to have made those look like feathers, they probably would have come off looking like something else. Let's be real here. They probably did that for a good reason. The evidence in that is, well, Shiva. Shiva was not censored in the same way, and that's probably the reason why. I can speculate on Renoa because they used her design for Dissidia NT. It appears in the remaster. They did that with a lot of the other characters. So I'm not going to jump on the bandwagon that Final Fantasy VIII was censored to appease a certain demographic. Nor will I jump on the fact that Tifa was censored as well. But clearly something is happening internally with Square Enix too, because of their ethics community board that they have to pass everything through. Nomura stating that in the Final Fantasy VII Remake interview kind of cemented the fact that, yeah, there are things going behind the scenes that are out of control, or out of their control. But my fear is that companies just aren't going to bring their games over to America anymore. The Atelier games are released by Koei Tecmo, the same company that releases Dead or Alive Extreme 3. Koei Tecmo did not release Dead or Alive Extreme 3 outside of Japan or Asian territories because they didn't want to ruffle the snowflake's feathers that are so vocal. So we suffered not getting that game. Could the same happen with the Atelier games? It also frustrates me that as more and more developers or more and more of these companies put pressure on these other companies, like Sony is doing with so many of their developers, that they're just eventually going to say screw it and not bring games over to the US anymore if they have to be censored. And that means a passion that I enjoy, games that I enjoy, will not come over because of the heavily censored bullshit that they continually have to go through. We saw this back in the day with Atlas. This is the reason Shin Megami Tensei and Shin Megami Tensei 2 never got localized over here, because Atlas couldn't bring them over without heavily censoring them down to pretty much completely nothing, because there was a lot to do with Satan and God and the devil and Bible references and a lot of adult imagery for a Super Nintendo game, and Nintendo's family-friendly policy prohibited those games from coming over. If we continue down this path and continue setting up these guidelines that people have to follow, these are the repercussions that are going to come from that. These are what we're going to see. And eventually, we'll just see a complete annihilation of Japanese content coming outside of Japan as they just shift to developing them in their home countries, where they're not going to be held to the same standards of fan service or sexualization or censorship that these American and Western companies are pressuring them to put on their games. That's why it's a problem. That's why it needs to be talked about. That's why censorship does need to be stopped. There are subtle little changes you can make, but when you start making those subtle little changes get bigger and bigger. And then, as I said, no more of the games are going to come out. You guys have been watching Gaming with Spoons. Let me know your comments down below in the description box. Hit subscribe there, ring that bell notification if you have not already to stay up to date with all things Japanese gaming related. Most importantly, stay happy, be happy, game happy. Spoons is checking out.